our fire departments and the coordination that they have achieved. The town of Paradise began last November 8th, just like we are here today. The campfire was 50 times larger than the Angora fire. A similar fire here would mean the utter destruction of all of Tahoe's communities. And be aware, our forests are no different than those that surrounded Paradise that day. A recent survey reported that the Tahoe Basin carries 4 times its safe fuel density. That afternoon, senior fire officials believed it would, 6 years ago, I was at the command center of the King Fire, the day that it literally exploded. And that afternoon, the senior fire officials thought that it was going to burn straight through the communities of Forest Hill and Georgetown and on into the Tahoe Basin, and they were powerless to stop it. One of the senior firefighters told me, "Congressman, I can't even get to this fire on the ground. We used to have good timber roads. I could get equipment out there. Right now, all I can do is drop stuff from the air and pray to God the wind shifts." Fortunately, it did shift, and things would be very different here today. A generation ago, we actively managed our forests to assure that tree density matched the ability of the land to support it. Every year, U.S. Forest Service foresters marked off excess timber and then sold it to timber companies that removed it. Well, today, well-intentioned environmental laws that were passed in the 1970s make that process endlessly time-consuming and ultimately cost-prohibitive. Now, those who tell you we just need more money forget that before these laws, harvesting excess timber didn't cost us anything. On the contrary, it brought in over $1 billion a year. 25% of that went directly into local governments like Tahoe, and the other 75% funded the entire U.S. Forest Service and paid for forest programs. But today, forest management costs us $2 for every dollar that it generates. Those who blame global warming should consider this. Before the U.S. Forest Service was created to actively manage our lands, California lost between 4.5 and 12 million acres to wildfire every year. When the Forest Service actively managed the land, that figure dropped to a very steady 250,000 acres. Last year, we lost 1.9 million acres. That's not the new normal. That's the old normal reasserting itself because we have abandoned our forests to neglect. And lest we forget, decaying or burning forests make a mockery of all of the laws aimed at reducing carbon emissions. Wildfires in the United States pump an estimated 290 million metric tons of carbon dioxide into the air every year. Healthy, growing forests absorb carbon. Milling surplus trees sequesters their carbon indefinitely and renews the forest's ability to store still more. An untended forest is no different than an untended garden. It will grow and grow until it chokes itself to death and then fall victim to disease, pestilence, drought, and ultimately catastrophic fire. It takes centuries for a forest to grow back and begin that cycle again. The growing peril of poorly managed forests is the direct driver behind skyrocketing fire insurance premiums in our mountain communities. Insurance is how a market assigns a dollar value to the risk of catastrophic loss. As the risk goes up, the cost of insurance goes up, and when the risk becomes unacceptable, insurance becomes unavailable. The good news is, I think we're turning the corner. Over the last few years, that's what this discussion's been at these Tahoe summits, whether to focus on active forest management and fire prevention. That's why I introduced the House version of the Tahoe Restoration Act in 2015. The heart of that act was to streamline the permitting process so we could begin removing excess timber from the Tahoe Basin before it could burn. And despite fierce opposition, we won that authority in the Wynne Act. And I want to thank Jeff Marcellet, the Forest Supervisor of the Tahoe Basin Management Unit, who is superbly implementing this new authority. Jeff, stand up and take it back. In order for the Forest Service to treat most acreage under NEPA, it takes an average 4.5 years. It costs millions of dollars to produce an environmental impact statement in excess of 500 pages. Under the new authority granted by our legislation, Jeff and his team permitted the first project in less than 4 months with a 16-page report, and that work is now proceeding. Our success here makes a powerful argument that the same expedited authority should be extended throughout the U.S. forest system. Now, last week, we hosted the annual conference of the Congressional Western Caucus here in Tahoe. Now, House and Senate members from across the country came here to see firsthand both the beauty and the threat to Tahoe. We toured the scar of the Angora fire, where after 12 years, scrub brush has replaced what was once a forest. We saw where the fire was stopped by properly thinned acreage in the urban interface, and we saw the first 4,000-acre thinning project made possible under this new law. After many years of moving closer and closer to apocalypse, I think Tahoe can now start moving away from it. And let's just pray there's still time. Thank you all.
Thank you. Well done. I would now like to introduce our main speaker. He is the governor of the state of California. He is a good friend. I was mayor of San Francisco a few terms before but he became mayor and was a very good mayor, and of course went on to become governor of this great state. The 5th largest economic power on earth, ladies and gentlemen, is the state of California. And so it is with great pleasure and fondness that I introduce to you the governor of the great state of California, Gavin Newsom.
Thank you. One thing I know about a keynote is the best keynotes are the shortest keynotes. And I know some of you are, I sense the audience, so I'm going to be sensitive to your time, but I'm very sensitive to the reason you're all here and the importance you place on this moment. And I want to just extend again an appreciation to each and every one of you for your participation today, for the work you do every single day to preserve and protect this extraordinary place. And I want to thank all of those that are in the front row for their incredible work every single day, the police chiefs, those that are fighting the good fight in forest management and vegetation management, to my team, Jennifer Montgomery and Wade Crowfoot, and to Tom Porter, the head of CAL FIRE, to the extraordinary folks behind me. One of the wonderful things about being here is that people like me come and go, but this commitment continues. The partnerships continue. Going back to Ronald Reagan in 1969 in Laxalt, the fact that they committed to the TRPA and committed to this effort to see Democrats and Republicans, as the senator said, working together across their differences. We recognize that old African proverb that if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, you have to go together. That commitment is demonstrable, and that commitment is alive here today with a new senator from Nevada, a new governor from Nevada, a new governor from California, a commitment to reconcile our interdependence. There's no leak, as they say when you're out on a boat. There's no leak on your side of our boat. You could say the same about this lake. That interdependence is self-evident. And that's interdependence, of course, is a big part of what focus is today. This notion, you know, I see the signs out there, and I guess you don't like I appreciate it. They're saying climate emergency, which I appreciate. And this notion of climate change being a dominant theme at this conference, I think is damn self-evident. The hots are getting hotter, the wets are getting wetter, the dries are getting drier. And Mother Nature, with all due respect, she may have been absent a decade ago, but she's very, very present today in the conversation. And for those that love baseball, you know well, Mother Nature bats last, and she bats 1,000. All she is chemistry, biology, and physics. It is a reality. And I'm not interested in debating it. We don't want to talk about what and why. We want to talk about how and who. We're in the implementation business in California. We're not pointing fingers anymore. We're actually leading at a scale no other state in our union is leading. Our low carbon green growth goals are second to none. We have goals to get to 40% below 1990 levels by 2030. We have commitments to get 5 million new electric vehicles out on the streets in the next 10 or so years. We have commitments to get to 100% renewable energy. And I don't know if you just saw last month, we announced that we already have exceeded our 2020 goals in terms of the renewable portfolios, proving that this can be accomplished, proving this can be done. It's interesting, you think back, and the Senator was bringing back that 1997 speech of Bill Clinton, and it was interesting, 97, 96, 97, we were debating Kyoto. And I remember Clinton going back to Al Gore, sent him out to China, or rather to Japan, to negotiate the Kyoto Accords, and by the time he came back, there was a resolution in the US Senate that was passed all but unanimously, basically rejecting the protocols before they were even introduced in Congress, because no one believed you could reduce your greenhouse gas emissions and grow your economy. But the senator just made an interesting point about California being the 5th largest economy in the world, a $3 trillion a year economy that just last week announced we have 113 consecutive months of net job growth, a record in this state, as we're enjoying record surpluses in this state, record low unemployment in this state, 3.8% average GDP growth in this state over the last 5 years, and we are significantly reducing our greenhouse gases. We are proving the paradigm at scale that no other state has done. So, I reject those that, believe in the tyranny of or. And it's one thing or the other. I embrace the frame of the genius of and. And that's the principle that drives our values here in the state of California. But I am not naive. It's just interesting. Last Monday, I had a press conference defending the bald eagle. We were talking about the Endangered Species Act under attack by an administration that doesn't believe in it. Hell, that was signed by Richard Nixon. I kind of miss Nixon. I said it. TRPA was signed by Nixon. EPA. Last week we filed, forgive me, on Monday our 56th lawsuit against the administration because they're trying to roll back the Clean Power Plan. But we began Monday with defending the bald eagle, and remarkably, I'm going to bet a little off topic, on Friday we had to defend the Statue of Liberty. I mean, these are interesting times. That was on the public charge. These are remarkably interesting times. A lot of headwind is my point. And that means your resolve, your clarity, not just the lake's clarity, your clarity of conviction is more important than ever, that we stand up and we step into this moment and we assert ourselves at peril of being judged not to have lived. We talk in generational terms. At peril of being judged not to have lived. This is a remarkably important moment in our time. And each and every one of us are going to look back on our lives and reflect on the fact that we either contributed to life of our city, our state, and our nation, in the world we're trying to build. And so it's in that spirit I just want to, again, thank you for your faith to this cause. And just close by reminding you that there's no greater cause on keeping this lake clear, because it's really a proxy for all of our larger efforts. than addressing those emissions coming out of our tailpipes. In California, that's roughly 40% of our work. And nothing made me more proud of serving California's leadership than what we were able to accomplish together by working directly with the automobile manufacturers, working with some of the largest in the country, now representing just shy of 40% of all the car purchases. They committed to California and the Obama administration's higher vehicle mile standards, 54.5 miles, regardless of the efforts of the administration to roll back those efforts. California is committed with the car companies to voluntarily keep those higher standards. That's California again, leading the way at scale. So I'm going to end by just, with pride. I'm proud of my state, and I'm proud of its leadership. I'm proud of Senator Feinstein. I'm proud of Governor Brown, John Laird, who's here. There's an old, I think it was Plato who said it. If you're Brown's former lieutenant governor, you got to quote the Greeks. Plato said, if there's any hope for the future, those with lanterns will pass them on to others. I really feel that way when I'm up here on the stage with new faces, but similar resolve. Those lanterns have been passed on, and they're shining brighter than ever because of your faith and because of the extraordinary leadership assembled behind me. Thank you, all of you, for your commitment to this lake and its future. I had the privilege, final words, of growing up just down the road, a mother, 19, at the Olympic Village Inn as a lifeguard, meets my father. I had the privilege of managing a hotel where I'm now the third generation of Newsom sued by the Cushing family. That proves my status up here in this community. I love this place. I love everything about it, and I love how it lights up my children's faces as they're experiencing what my father experienced as a young child and what I experienced as a young child. Here they are generationally. So it's in that spirit, that generational spirit, that commitment to sustainable thinking that we all, I think, are committed to today, that again, I congratulate you on everything you've done to get us to this remarkable point. And I know this, in closing, the best is yet to come. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well done. I made a mistake that I hope to remedy right now. I overlooked someone I wanted to. Could we please just finish? Could we please? You're welcome, but please do not disturb this. You can talk to the press afterwards. Please let us finish our program. This is not the place. He'll be here when you're finished, and I'm going to ask you to leave if you won't stop. I'm going to the question is not going to be responded to. So we need to finish our program. Please allow us to do that. Well, I think we...
By the way, you guys, you have me. I'm going to walk with you, and I'm going to talk right after this. You got it. Done deal. Done deal. You got it.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. I should have, before Gavin, introduced Barney Gant. Barney Gant is the Deputy Regional Forester of the United States Forest Service's Pacific Southwest region, and that includes us here at Tahoe. So nearly 80% of the land in the Tahoe Basin is essentially managed by the federal government. That's our responsibility. That includes the 3 national forests, the El Dorado, the Tahoe, and the Humboldt. And they span 2 states. Forester Gant I'm very grateful for your work in managing this complex area, and it's a great pleasure for me to ask you to say a few words. Please come forward. Thank you.
Senator, if you would just stay with me.
Sure.
So as I was listening to the presentations, I was just thinking about when you were younger.
Give it to a man.
No, and what I mean at 16, and I wanted, you gave most of us, or all of us, thank you, but really the thanks goes to you for your leadership over 20 years ago, because without you, none of us would be here. So how about we give the senator a round of applause?